Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Development Hell Podcast. And this is the Movie Club, and we're at it to talk about Princess Mononoke from Studio Ghibli, from director Hayao Miyazaki. And we got Kevin, we got Vinnie, and I got Matt and Joe all in the same frame. But this is a 1997 anime on a journey to find the cure for Tatarigami's curse. Ashitaka finds himself in the middle of a war between the forest gods and Tatara, a mining colony. In this quest, he is also meets San, the Mononoke Haileigh. So this is our second animated movie?
Yeah, Lilo and Stitch was first.
That we've done on the movie clubs after Lilo and Stitch. Except I don't remember in Lilo Stitch people getting arms and heads chopped off. So
just blown up too, just
everything gone. But as we always do, we will go around and give everybody's basic thoughts to start. And Kevin, you get to be in the top left corner of things this time, so you get to go first.
All right. Well, first I got a question for everybody. Sub gang, dub gang. Where do we all fall?
So we watched it together.
Yeah.
And we did watch, I have all the dubbed versions with here's the thing. At least these are high quality dubbed performances.
Oh yeah.
Because they have just for the record, Billy Crudup, Billy Bob Thornton, Minnie Driver, John DiMaggio, Claire Danes, Jada Pinkett Smith, Gillian Anderson, Keith David. There's and Tara Strong. There's some legit voice actors here, but yeah, we watched it dubbed.
Yeah, and I think to go off of that too, the fact that Ghibli was so against how the dubbing would go, or they were so on top of the way that it would go to the point where it kind of became like an urban legend that they sent the Weinsteins that katana so that they wouldn't make any cuts to it or affect the dubbing. Stands that I think that's why it's probably just as, and I did see it once subbed in the past, and I really don't notice the difference.
Did you watch subbed or dubbed?
I watched it dubbed. I think that almost every single one of the famous Studio Ghibli movies have really awesome voice actors. So I think kind of Howl's Moving Castle had Christian Bale. He just collect all these really awesome names. But it's really interesting because these people really do a good job at melting into the movie.
Yeah.
It's not super zany, or it's kind of like a caricature of themselves, in their voice, and it's oh, okay, that's definitely Christopher Walken. It's nothing like that, you know what I mean?
The stereotypical bad dub.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also sometimes dub is okay. If you watch the original Dragon Ball Z and you listen to the sub version, I don't know, the voice actors, it's not really they don't sound too great. At least for me. I don't know. It's a preference thing. But yeah.
Matt's throwing bombs around here.
Yeah, definitely. It's not a comment section.
Granted, you probably watched the most Dragon Ball out of all of us.
I mean, I don't know. Anyone else?
It's not a contest between you.
How about you, Vinny? Did you watch sub or dub?
Dubbed.
Okay. I'm the only one that did subtitles, I guess.
The purist.
Yep, there you go.
The purists.
Well, it was also my first time watching it, so I kind of just wanted to see it how it was originally made, I guess.
Yeah,
I was just curious about that.
I think I've watched one Ghibli film subbed ever. And that was because I went to see Porco Rosso for Ghibli Fest, and the only one that I could go to was the subbed.
Yeah, it was the same thing for me when I went to Rises.
Well, when I went on HBO Max to watch it, I mean, I wasn't really thinking, am I gonna watch it sub or dubbed? I just turned it on, and it was the dubbed version, so I really didn't think twice about it.
Yeah, I don't think they actually had the subtitles for all the movies. They list them separately too. I found out on HBO.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. But what were your thoughts, Kevin?
I really liked it, and this was a first for me. I actually took notes while I was watching it. I took 2 full pages just of everything that stood out to me. I'd say my overall impression is that it was a super cool movie. I don't know what I was expecting. I didn't expect there to be as much combat as there was in the movie. I really liked the way they framed all the combat scenes. It was a lot more violent than I expected, but the action was really well done. I really liked the whole backstory with the gods and everything.
Yeah.
I thought Ashitaka was a cool character. My favorite character coming out of the movie was Lady Eboshi, though.
Milady.
Right, the lady.
Milady.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the whole setup for the gods and just the way it affected the human beings throughout the plot. The way Akashi would have to fight himself to not fight people.
Mhm.
I enjoyed that, and it was awesome.
How about you, Vinny?
I really enjoyed it. This is actually only the second Studio Ghibli movie that I've seen. The only other one I saw, like I saw it back when I was like 6 or 7, was Kiki's Delivery Service. And my brother, he actually rented Princess Mononoke like a couple of times like from the library when we were in middle school, and I would like pop it in. I wasn't like too interested in it, but no, just like watching it like in its entirety, I really am glad I watched it. I watched it again. I thought it was a beautiful story. I thought it was a great environmental message without it being heavy-handed. I absolutely loved the creature designs. Obviously, even though I haven't seen many of Hayao Miyazaki's, even though I haven't seen actually, you know what? I'm sorry. When I said this is like only the second Studio Ghibli movie that I've seen, it's also the only the second Hayao Miyazaki movie that I've seen. But even so, I know, just by reading about his stuff, I know how incredibly inventive he is throughout his movies. So just seeing everything in Princess Mononoke and like what he was able to do, like it really made me tell myself, wow, I should really watch more of his movies, because like even though this movie is over 2 hours, I felt like it flew by. There's just so much story, to get absorbed in. There's a great setup in the first third that eventually leads into like every like the main conflict between the people of the forest and the people in that village right outside the woods. And I thought it was great.
Joe, send you to the left on the actual screen.
I was wondering how we were going to go around to do that, but yeah, 3 things that come to mind when we watched this movie together during the movie marathon, on a nice screen. And the first thing that jumped out to me, I know it's annoying to focus on style over substance, but in all reality, there's such a beauty to a cell painted animated movie that was shot with a camera, and you could see a bit of the shadow. You can tell that it was painted. There's a bit of that jiggle in the lines that you just can't recreate in a computer. Maybe technology will get. We did see Across the Universe, and they created something very beautiful with what they did. So hopefully, I'm not coming across like a purist by saying that. Maybe I already did. I apologize. Don't hate me, YouTube. But there's such
YouTube won't hate you, just
obviously,
people on YouTube.
Obviously. There's such a beauty to a 2D traditionally animated movie from the 90s that utilized this style. Very beautiful. I also noticed that it has a pacing to it that's unlike a lot of traditional animated movies that we're watching now. Hey guys,
just keep going.
I'll keep going. He's the pacing of it is very unlike most American animated films. I feel like you said it before too.
No kid pacing.
No kid pacing. It gets the point, and I'm saying that because we watched Atlantis: The Lost Empire right afterwards, and the thing I could not stand about it was that everything happens at a lightning quick pace. Where within not even the first 15 minutes, they're already on the ship, ready to go find the island, and there's no chance to really absorb and take a time. This movie does that. It allows you to appreciate the lore, and that leads me to the third thing: is that the lore. Where we touched upon the environmental message, the gods, and how it relates to that, and I think they did such a great job with constructing this world using mythology, traditional Eastern mythology into it. Where even as we were watching it, I remember I was another guy we were watching it with. I mentioned I was like, "Well, does this really make sense if that?" And then eventually, later in the movie, they did explain it. So it was a well crafted mythology that supports the story. Like as I get older, I really love how a story is being put together, and you're in the middle. You start off with danger, like a call for adventure because his arm gets infected, where that sets the action off, it gets the story ready, and then you're in for the journey. So yeah, I mean, as far as well crafted story, well animated, and the lore, all aspects that make me really love this movie.
Matt.
I like the movie a lot. This is, I think, the third time I saw this. Like once I just randomly decided to watch it. I think randomly in high school. I was like, oh, let's see it, and then I actually saw it in class, and it was this, and it was Nausicaa. I think that's also like another like environmental picture, which was really awesome. What do I think of this movie? It's great for all the reasons that you guys have said. Like the story is great in terms of kind of like the message, and also like the symbolism. Like every single time what is it, the forest spirit, I guess like the head forest spirit kind of like the steps on the ground. It's kind of like literally life and death kind of like happening, like blooming and wilting. But I like all of that, but then also I think there's like the one tiny random thing that I just like resonated to me was all these tiny little moments where I guess they decided to go like above and beyond, maybe kind of like most like anime movies, like many movies in general. Like there are these tiny little things where like the leper, when he was talking about like I forget, Milady, whatever the hell her last name was, like she actually treats us like humans, and you saw kind of like the bandages over his eyes starting to get wet, or when someone is making reference to a character that's kind of like in the background, you see not only that character but other characters like as well, kind of like moving around and blinking, or like someone makes a joke, oh, like pull up your blouse, and then kind of like all like the rest of them do, but you have to kind of like scan the entire frame or whatever going to TV. I don't know, there's like tiny little random things. I don't really know anything about animation, but I can appreciate when something looks nice, or when I can imagine kind of like, okay, so that probably took like hours and hours extra when they could have cut just like 10 seconds or like a minute of that time they decided to keep it in the movie. Like I really like that. Or even like small hand things where someone like hands someone something and you see them, I just like pick it up and hold it, but then like put it inside the pocket and then like pull like the drawstring of the little pouch that it was a really interesting kind of like thing. I kind of wish I knew more about animation to kind of really appreciate what goes inside of it, but visually, it's great. Yeah.
How about you, Jim?
Hi guys, sorry I'm late. Bit of a mess. I really like Ghibli films. Maybe my favorite thing about the Miyazaki world is that it's never like the animation is not for kids. Like Joe, you were saying, and the pacing's not for kids, and he's not afraid to be wildly creative and weird in ways that like if you're holding yourself back, like, oh, we can't do that in a cartoon, we can't do that in a kids movie, like it'll scare the children or whatever. Like he gives himself free reign, for the whole studio. Really, it's we probably give Miyazaki too much credit, right? But I think my favorite thing about the movies they make as a studio is that it kind of challenges as far as the fantasy world goes. It's really it doesn't follow the same kind of tropes and good and evil characters that you might expect in like a Disney film or something like that. I think I enjoyed that all of the characters. I didn't dislike any of them. I kind of understood where all of them were coming from. They all had redeeming qualities, and they all kind of had questionable motives. So yeah, I think I just maybe took issue with the idea that at the end that I don't know if you guys even agree, but to me it was like a happy ending, and the idea that human industry and the old world can kind of live in peace, can kind of coexist. And I don't know that the way the movie sets it up, if that makes sense for the movie with all the violence.
Yeah.
And everything.
Which, well, that'll be the first thing we talk about.
Yeah.
But this is, just to give a little background, this is probably the first time I ever watched any of this. I was over at my neighbor's house when I was a kid, and their dad had this on. And I watched like the beginning parts of this. I had never forgotten that giant infected boar
Mhm.
from like the time I was probably like 9 years old, 10 years old, watching that, because like that just burned in my brain, because I thought that was terrifying. And yeah, well, that's the thing. This, to what Jim's talking about, is like, this is a film made for adults.
Yeah.
This is not a kid's movie.
Nope.
This is a mature and really well realized, animation wise, well told, narratively film that takes fantasy to a whole other level. Because if you really think about it, there's not a whole lot of great fantasy in live action. It's really hard to make work. But in animation, fantasy's been able to live on in Disney and stuff like that. But you'll realize the first time that you watch an international animated film, that obnoxious high-speed kid pacing is not how everybody else makes their films in animation. And Japanese, like, well, anime specifically, does not have that kind of pacing. You can watch something like Ghost in the Shell, which is an hour and 20 minutes, and has a pace that would probably be shorter, that, well, it would feel longer than any Pixar movie, despite some of them are close to 2 hours long.
Right.
It's because it takes its time and really lets you get into the world and the characters. Because you have this story where you have such a deep-rooted thematic structure of nature versus humans and industrialization. And like many classic films like Lord of the Rings, that story at its roots has a lot of that. I was just rewatching Fellowship of the Ring yesterday, and watching Fangorn getting torn down and turned into like burning all the wood and everything, and obviously you get the Ints in the second film. This film has such a strong roots in terms of its themes, and then how they bring these characters to life is so impressive. And that forest god will haunt your dreams. How?
Oh, you mean the face that goes?
Oh yeah,
It's
that
like the
yes.
Burger King, right?
Yeah.
It's a fantasy character.
they besides the movie like The Ritual, I'm trying to think of another creature that'll haunt my dreams more than forest god in this movie.
Well, with that forest god, like the way how seeing as he has both the power to to give life and to take life, like it really is like a neat thing that Miyazaki did with having this benevolent creature also have a sort of unsettling quality to him.
Well, and I think that's just very deep seated in Japanese mythology, because like there's some really creepy things Japanese mythology, and it's interesting. Like you have it in its one form, and at night it changes into this giant like golem looking thing that walks through the forest. But I guess to segue into, Jim, what you brought up, which is a really interesting conversation, is does this film undercut that kind of idea of like this city is so building up in terms of industrialization and stuff like that. I do feel like I'm trying to really, because I haven't really thought about like at the very end, does it feel like the film's trying to say that we can have harmony?
Yeah.
But I think the thing is, it's like,
That's the closest thing I can think of a character that looks like that, by the way. I said that.
yes, we have received word of the Care Bear star that
has a similar looking face, and it's just as disturbing.
Wait, what are those Japanese masks? What is
Kabuki mask.
Yeah.
What, is that the one with like the scary teeth?
Yeah.
That's what that is. That's what that reminded me of. That what you just said in the group chat. I don't know what that is.
Oh, you mean Sans mask?
like, is the film being too hopeful to the idea that like there can be some kind of balance between human advancement and also doing right by the environment? Because I feel like there is. Is it gonna happen? No.
I thought it was really interesting because I didn't even think that it was like I didn't take it as like a happy ending. I thought it was kind of like this is so the spirit, I guess like the soul of the forest died, almost kind of like a Jesus thing. So it's kind of like, okay, you got one last shot. Literally, you got like one last shot. This is it.
And we're still gonna F it up.
If you mess it up, then that's the reason why it fell over. I don't know, but then you have like that's like that one little like tree spirit. But does a tree spirit turn into a forest spirit? I don't know. But I took it as this was kind of like a super quick like redemption of like man's sins, and then it was kind of like I'm gonna go out like a thumbs up and a middle finger, kind of like.
Similarly to that too, but for me, like maybe it's because I've watched the Miyazaki and the interviews, and we get to really know like he puts his his love and passions into his movies, which he puts in strong environmental messages on saving the environment, but he also loves technology. Mm-hmm. Like he loved planes. Like I'm thinking about Wind Rises, where he makes a love letter about a guy who develops a jet fighter that destroys, countless lives. So in some ways, it's kind of like for him, it kind of makes sense that he would show this I guess struggle he has between loving technology and progress and innovation, but then also what can we do about our world, our environment, and taking care of our planet and all that stuff.
Yeah, I don't think innovation, at least on a personal level, I don't think that innovation can be seen as kind of like the enemy. I think it's just to be like responsible.
Right. Like finding a balance between the two.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just how we do it.
Yeah.
It is not great.
CAI.
Yeah, I would say a big takeaway I had from this movie that formed my opinion on the ending is just there was a huge focus on conflict in this movie. The major theme in the movie seemed to be that every time somebody tried to intervene and put a stop to the conflict, things would get worse. It would snowball. And my takeaway for the ending of the movie is that all this small group of people, essentially, it's not all of Japan, it's not all the world. They learned a lesson by the end of the movie. But I think personally the last line of the movie kind of ties it up a little bit. So it's, I give up, you can't win against fools. And that's the closing line of the movie.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that's necessarily hopeful, but I do think that the characters come out a little bit more hopeful than they were.
Yeah, I feel like you do have to, like, based off of that line, thinking about, I feel like the characters who survived and experienced the conflict of this film are coming out, like the humans coming out more knowledgeable of the need for balance. The struggle is dealing with everybody else who they're going to have to try to help get to that point. Because there's always going to be people that are going to be there to cause more conflict and not go along with, what's probably best for everybody, because that doesn't fit in how they perceive things. But I do, like, obviously on the, like, main level, a lot of this film is looking at the destructive nature of what human advancement has done to nature. And, you know, it's interesting to see nature fighting back. And also one of the moments that really hit hard was when the humans like were using the boar skins to mask his nature and like come into the forest and do that attack. And like, I'm just like, so messed up. And it's that kind of thing where it's just like, we'll manipulate the environment, we'll use it to our own nefarious purposes. And what's the result going to be? Because the direct result of that was the forest god being infected.
Mm-hmm. It was foreshadowed a little bit by the bear skins earlier in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
What moment was that with the bearskins? I don't remember that scene.
There's these guys tracking down, I think the boars, and they're moving through the forest wearing bearskins.
Oh, the hunters, right?
The hunters, yeah,
no,
yeah.
Oh no, you know, I think when they were wearing the bearskins, I think they were tracking the forest god.
Mhm.
I think.
They were either tracking I think it was the deer god, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to hate that one tracker guy, but
Me too.
I couldn't. Like they're all the characters are really likable.
Yeah.
Film to me.
Especially in that dub version with Billy Bob Thornton.
I love how that character, he sounds like he has like this cadence to him, and like, you know, you don't expect him to be a fighter, but like when he actually does that jump kick, like it never surprises me how it always catches me off guard when he does that kick. I'm like, what am I watching right now? It's like when you're watching a character get their head blown off by the arrows. Like, animation, man, do things you can't do in live action.
Well, and shamelessly plugging, I'm going to be having a podcast coming out for Scribe Magazine. I do like a weekly top 10, and I did my top 10 animated action films. And because the thing is, like, a lot of people get caught up in when you talk about action movies, you think about like live action, John Wick, Mission Impossible, Mad Max, Die Hard. But there's a lot of great action films that are in animation. And this is one of them. The confrontations, the battles in this, because this is like a full-blown war going on. This is an animated war film. And it just happens to be a battle between humans and the creatures of the forest. Like, those boars are going into fight, and things don't go well.
I love when they put the war paint on with their nose. Like, at first,
Yeah.
like, how do they do it?
And then it answered like a couple minutes later. But the violence, like, I think the first moment you realize how brutal this movie is when that one arrow takes off both arms off of a guy earlier in the film. You're just like,
I was gonna bring that up.
out of nowhere. And then heads just whack, gone. Most violent arrows I think I've ever seen in a movie.
Special shout out to that POV shot when Akashi is riding towards the samurai, by the way. That was probably my favorite shot in the movie.
Oh, that was so good.
Yeah.
When he reaches back and like shoots the one guy's head off and the other one turns and runs away.
That was a great one.
It's like, I'll shoot this. Forget this.
Well, because the thing is, it's like, on top of it, like, you just don't expect it. Like, this is a hard R animated movie that it's just like, it's violent, and it's fittingly violent. War is violent. Like, if you're going in and showing like war and stuff like that, like I mentioned before, even rewatching Fellowship of the Ring, you see goblins get decapitated. The only reason it's not rated R is because they're goblins. Because those are human heads flying. That would, and our blood, instead of like black blood shooting everywhere, 100% would be rated R. But the thing is, it's like, this film really takes on action and does it so impressively. I'm a huge action movie snob. Like, I will be the first one to sit there watching an action movie and get pissed off when they over edit, and you can tell they're editing around stunt people, and it just looks bad. And this film, which that's the interesting thing about animation, is you don't have to worry about any of that. But you do have to put in that effort to make that fully realized on screen. And this is up there with Akira and Ghost in the Shell in terms of really displaying incredible action and animation.
Yeah, the pre-planning for this takes years. Like they put a lot of effort in making sure the world they show, like whereas in live action, you're taking the world around you and you're like, how are we going to deal with that?
Yeah.
And then it's the other way around where you have to put in a lot of effort, a lot of pre-planning to make sure, all these aspects, like you mentioned too, Matt, when it comes to the little details in the background. Nowadays, you can have a CG character or a crowd of people acting a certain way, whereas back then you're either deciding, am I going to animate background characters, or or are they just going to be matte paintings? Like it's insane the level of detail that goes with that.
I love the fully realized nature of like this Iron Town, like, and it's so interesting. It's so detailed
Personality too.
Well, yeah, and Matt, you brought up a really important point about like the lepers and stuff like that, because that adds so much humanity and layers to Lady Eboshi, because she could have easily just been evil, villainous, who wants to destroy the forest and make money and stuff like that. But you see layers, you see, despite what she's doing to nature, you see the humanity she shows to other humans. You could have easily made somebody who's just hateful and all powerful, but it takes the time to actually flesh out her character.
Well, that's what I liked about how the Iron Town was depicted, because I mean, yeah, I know obviously you see it throughout the movie, but especially for like the first third of the movie where like it's mainly focused like on Iron Town before the main character like starts like venturing into the forest, like you really get a great feel for like how this village operates and what its relation is to the forest. So then by the time the main character, I can't remember the main character's name, but by the time he goes into the forest, you know what's at stake in terms of like the Iron Village, and then at this point you're waiting to see what's going to go on in the forest and how that's going to impact what we see in the Iron Village.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was a well realized location there.
Mhm.
I dug it. You really got a sense for why everybody was sticking around too.
And like all the women doing like the heavy duty work, just being like, we don't need you. And then
And John DiMaggio being most of the characters,
Yeah.
each one having their own personality.
and then Ashitaka, just after the whole entire, with like Mononoke coming in and all that going on, just straight up pushes that gate open
Oh yeah,
by himself and using his curse strength.
Satan power.
That was such a great moment too, because it's like dude's bleeding out. Like he got shot right through the abdomen and everything, and he's just going. That curse keeping him alive. What the one scene that came right after that is such an interesting use of shadow with how they portray like the gorillas in that scene where they're all just these eerie silhouettes. Which I thought, for the first time I watched this, I thought that's how they looked. Like I thought these were these strange creatures, and then they did show them later, and they actually look like apes. And I'm like, oh wait a minute, guess it was just nighttime. But the thing is, like, that there's so many scenes that really stick out. The wolves, like, they're really awesome, and you see them. Keith David voices the leader of the boars in the dub version, and just all the creatures in this are so awesome and are so interesting and have layers. There's stubbornness with the leader of the boars. He's like, we have to go into battle. I'm like, this isn't going to wind up good for you. And that just, going back to that horrific moment where they used his skin. And like he gets affected and everything, just crazy. But this is such an interesting and complicated film that I'm sure plenty of people go into this thinking like, oh, it's an animated fantasy movie. Like this isn't Tangled. This isn't like this isn't like
Shrek.
Well, Shrek is mature for its own reason. different reasons. But this is my favorite anime. And I was so happy that like we wound up talking about this for the show, because this is such a great film, because I wouldn't say it's underrated in Miyazaki's filmography, but so many people look at Spirited Away as like the crown jewel of his films, and like this is up there.
Yeah. Like
a lot of his other films are great and fun and exciting, but like there's like S tier Miyazaki films, and I would definitely put this up there.
I would too.
Spirited Away.
It's kind of the shame when you have like a filmmaker with such a great filmography. It's kind of like when you have an argument over what the best Edgar Wright, Cornetto trilogy movie is, and everybody has their own equal reason for saying which one is their favorite. Like for me, it'll always be Shaun of the Dead, but I know for a fact that there's going to be people that will have more reason to love, Hot Fuzz, or even love At World's End.
Hot Fuzz. I like all three, but
exactly. See, this is the point I'm trying to make.
But Hot Fuzz is my favorite.
I'll throw my hat in for The World's End. Is to human.
No, because it's funny we're saying that, because like I was thinking in my mind, which one am I gonna say is better, Spirited Away, or am I gonna say it's Princess Mononoke? And I'm always torn with that, because for me personally, I do feel like Spirited Away is a perfection. It's like the of his career,
Mm-hmm.
But I watched Princess Mononoke, and I'm like, this is also really good too.
So how I put it in my head, and this is a very Shane comparison. So I love the Coen brothers. They're my favorite directors. You have very distinct different kinds of Coen brothers films. You have, the Big Lebowskis, and you have the No Country for Old Men. They're both amazing and perfect in their own way, but they're kind of hard to compare to each other, because one of them is straight up crazy, zany lampooning of PI stories, and one of them's one of the most Cormac McCarthy possible nihilistic looks at humanity.
That's just like your opinion, man.
Well, I was gonna also say that's where Ballad of Buster Scruggs is the brilliance of it, is that it's just all of them.
Yeah, a bunch of them.
It's just all of them in there.
But like, it's hard to compare even Spirited Away and Princess Mononoke, because they are both fantasies, but they're not alike at all. One of them is very much like a Japanese fairy tale. And like, it's what Spirited Away is a lot more what a lot of people would think would be as animated fantasy film. Yeah, it's weird. Like, Faceless is something else.
Oh, we're talking about pigs too. Like pigs and Miyazaki and pigs, man.
I've yet to see Spirited Away. I got to put that on my list.
There you go.
No spoilers, no more.
We can do it for next animation month for next year when we do our May movie.
There you go.
But, it's the kind of thing where, and Princess Mononoke is a war film. It's an action film. It is an adventure film made for adults. Like, there are definitely lessons that kids can learn from this, but they're going to have to learn them in between people getting their arms chopped off and their heads blown off with arrows. So it's like, are you going to show your kids? Maybe I would. But
you're living up to be your neighbor.
Well, to be fair, I was shown The Godfather when I was 10 years old, and I turned out perfectly.
Apparently this movie too, right?
Huh?
And apparently this movie too.
Well, to be fair, I didn't watch this whole movie, and that was not my family who showed me this movie. It was actually my grandfather who told my mom he has to watch it, because The Godfather's my culture.
Appreciation.
So it's like, well, to be fair, I also watched like Die Hard. Like, I watched a lot of R-rated movies when I was a kid. I watched James Bond movies since I was 7. They might not be R-rated, but they're not for kids.
Nope.
Just the double entendres that Pierce Brosnan's chucking out like candy in those Bond movies. But back to the point, this is very much more of an adult fantasy in the ways that, like, it's not like most animated movies, and I appreciate that about it. Because to go to the immortal words of Guillermo del Toro, and him, all the things that he's done for animation, and talking about animation, it's like animation is not a kid's. It's not a genre.
Medium.
It is a medium of storytelling, and it's not just for kids. Nor are fairy tales. Watch Pan's Labyrinth. Go show your kids Anti-Fascism, the movie, and
Even
see.
Shape of Water, that's a fairy tale too.
Shape of Water is a fairy tale. Grinding Nemo.
Well, I mean, like it's just a perfect example of how animation isn't just for kids, just like how fantasy isn't just for kids. Like it could be for anyone.
Yeah. Yet again, keep going back to Lord of the Rings. A lot of that stuff's not for kids.
No, it's not.
Also PG-13. Technically, little kids shouldn't be watching Lord of the Rings based off of ratings.
Guardians 3, first Marvel movie, sci-fi fantasy, has the first F-bomb in MCU history.
Oh, it's so funny too.
Yeah. Great in context too. Just reading out of context.
Tangent, but I think this was the actors that play Merry and Pippin in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. They do a podcast together called The Friendship Onion.
Yes.
And,
I heard about that.
I saw a clip the other day where they were hashing out what it meant to be rated PG-13, and that means that per movie they get one F-bomb. So they could have dropped an F-bomb into each film very strategically. So they go through a bunch of scenarios.
There were characters that would have done it.
I'm no effing man. That probably would have been the best use of the F word.
No one fucking goes into Mordor.
One does not simply effing go into Mordor. So some of the other ones, like, you shall not effing pass. Can't chucking that F word out there.
Get the F out of here. Or, if De Niro were Gandalf, he'd be like,
I think the one that got the biggest laugh out of me is that still only counts as effing one. When Legolas takes down a mobile.
That'd probably be my pick.
I would have lost it if John Rhys Davies just dropped an F-bomb there. That would have been amazing.
Do you remember that movie Robin Hood where Christian Slater with Kevin Costner, and they landed that F-bomb? That's what that reminds me of. It catches me off guard.
So actually, you know what? It was very interesting because I was recording one of my podcasts for Rowan and the Wasteland, and we did our top 5 R-rated movies. And like I had Tarantino on there because he earns those R ratings.
Yeah. Like
he goes in there, I'm gonna get it. Probably sometimes he has to fight to make it R rating, to be perfectly frank. Fury Road's on there, makes sense. No Country for Old Men, makes sense. And then like Grand Budapest Hotel was on there, and I'm like, I think I stepped back, I'm like, for a second, I'm like, is that R-rated? And then I started thinking about people getting their heads chopped off, people dropping F-bombs everywhere. I'm like, oh.
Someone lose their fingers too.
Yeah, well, Jeff Goldblum loses his fingers before he gets killed.
Yeah.
But the thing is, have you ever felt that feeling where like you're thinking like, oh, that movie isn't that bad, and you watch it and then realize they say the F word every other line, and you're like, is it because I'm getting older and don't notice as much because that's just normal now that like, oh, that's not R-rated, and it definitely is because they probably dropped like 50 F words in the movie.
Yeah, I'm more shocked when I watch something like this and it's got all this gore in it. And, oh wait, that was PG-13.
Maybe it speaks to the joy of the film club where we bring up these movies and we do it in a way where there's so many films to choose from, right?
Yeah.
Our expectations, our threshold is going to be a lot lower. And we probably haven't seen the movie at all, or, we don't even know what we're going to get every month, where the expectation is much greater. That's what I look forward to whenever we get these new movies. And I like putting in something that I had never seen before, and I'm just waiting to just get like a fresh, oh crap, did that just happen moment? Because I've been getting a lot of those. Between Drive, really caught me off guard. Place Beyond the Pines really threw my expectations out the window.
And we're going to be watching Unforgiven for next month, so dropping that here for all of you. Yeah, not your old school John Wayne Western.
This isn't your dad's Western.
Your dad probably still loves Unforgiven, but it probably isn't the Western he watched growing up. So,
well, guys, listen, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I actually have to get going. But I look forward to Unforgiven next month.
All right, we'll see you then.
All right, have a good one, guys.
See you, buddy.
what else does everybody have to say about Princess Mononoke?
So-
I think that the when this forest spirit turns into at night turns into that, I don't know, like that ethereal creature, or whatever. It reminded me of the moon spirit from the last Airbender. I don't know.
Yeah. Good comparison.
I remember that. The faceless thing from Spirited Away. Like, I was like, why? What is this other movie where it's like black goo attacking people? I was like, oh, it's Spirited Away. So that was also kind of interesting. That will haunt my dreams, but it's only that picture. You should like show the picture to
There you go. This is what I was thinking about when wish we can get a better day. Can and see it. Like that's what I think about when I think of the forest creature. It just if you look closely, you see dimples
The deer god's
all on this
face.
friggin' character.
Right.
Like why?
Yeah, that thing and the Annihilation.
Well, that's
Unintentional.
that's
uncanny.
unappreciated dimple hate. Thanks, Joe.
That and the Annihilation Bear, like that's like my sleep paralysis demon. Both of those things.
I wake up and you can't move and you're staring at that character. Great.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
No, but
You mean where the bear's just like, oh man, it's just like, yep.
yeah, that wasn't the funnest things to think
It's okay.
about.
Five Nights at Freddy's coming out. in
Yeah, I saw
October.
a trailer for that too. That looked really bad. Well, I don't know. Let's see what happens. But I'm trying to think of any other thing that I was thinking about when I was watching this movie. I think someone already said it, but I think that maybe that was Kevin. I think you said that like there's a lot of gray in everyone's morality and
Yeah.
character wise. Like even your main character, like he's like literally fighting back.
I think that was
Not
Jim.
even really, because one of the lines I was about to say he's like fighting back like rage and hate, but then he also has that line when he's like holding the sword, and he was like, well, if I knew this was gonna cure me, I would have let this like I would tear you apart. Like so like everyone's kind of pretty understandably pretty gray. I mean, it's like a wartime film, but I don't know, I thought that was pretty interesting too. Yeah, animation doesn't have to be for kids. I think it's just I really appreciated this movie kind of was just like an effort into let's just tell a story. And also a last thing, I was one of those people that thought that Pan's Labyrinth was for kids. And I was very surprised when someone took a bottle and caved someone else's nose in.
I think it was the moment with the book and you see the you know what starting to bleed that really threw me out.
I feel
No,
I feel
choked
like
the
it's-
book and the bleeding.
I feel like the first shot that you see in Pan's Labyrinth where you're just like, oh, wait a minute, is that where Captain Fascist just starts bashing a guy's face in with a bottle and you're just like, oh, this isn't a kid's movie.
Yeah, I got the Netflix like DVD and I was like unrated. What does that mean? All right, let's see what happens.
Well, because those trailers made that seem like a kid's movie.
Yeah.
Bad marketing.
You know, it's this movie, I guess as far as like final thoughts goes, if anybody doesn't know, I used to do an animation review series. I'm still planning on eventually putting on more content for it. But I mean the thing that started that was, I originally wanted to make animated movies and I did want to be, a professional cartoonist. And a lot of the things that bother me, and it's not going to say bother me now, because I think now we're in a golden age after watching, Across the Spider-Verse, where I feel like it's more accepted for us to have animated films that are for a general audience or even for adults, for teenagers, for niche markets, as opposed to just one and all. And I think that was the problem, that we always have this argument about animated movies being for kids. Now, culturally in America, a lot of this has to do with the fact that Disney just knew how to market that, and that, he wasn't part of the problem, but also the success in that he's making movies that are not kids' movies, but they have the kids in mind, and it's giving everybody the same enjoyable experience, which for years created this argument. Whereas, that's how it's being seen, because kids are being put in mind when making these movies. Whereas I feel like now, like we're entering this golden age where we can have, what animation was always to me, art in motion. It's literally watching a created world from someone from paint and clay or computer technology to create a story. And to me, that is such a beautiful experience that makes me love film as an art. And if we can get more of that, I'm all for it.
Also, the dialogue in this movie, dialogue is also like a really interesting thing too. Because when you were talking just now, I was thinking of like perfect example, kind of like overplayed a little bit, and we'll talk about it. But I was thinking like Rick and Morty, where it's kind of like, yeah, like that is 100% animated. And when you actually really listen to like how people talk,
it's mature.
It is so mature.
It's
like,
mature.
It's very obvious that the writers kind of like they have like actual like professionals and like scientists like consulted. And in this movie too, it's kind of like you listen to like how people talk. Like what did Gillian Anderson say about have like I want to my last breath to be to have like that woman's head in my mouth,
yeah,
like scratching her face. Like, it's very interesting. It's like, yeah, like that's also like a huge part too, like taking all aspects of the film, and treating it with care. Yeah,
it's like the opposite when we're talking about movies that are made just for kids. There's these adult cringy animated movies where they're just putting F-bombs, dick jokes, like
sausage
party. Right? Where it's like, oh, that's what it must be to be. It's like, no, it's about being mature. That's why I always go to the Looney Tunes, right? Where the humor is just so mature. When you're watching Duck Season, where they're having the back and forth and they're talking about wordplay and just something that we laugh at because that's something we find funny as adults.
Yeah, I remember like being incredibly bored as a little kid sometimes. Sometimes, not all the time. Since I was watching Looney Tunes, where it's kind of like.
But then your dad's like, this is dad joke humor.
It would come on Boomerang. Yeah, it was like this is boring. It's like you have to get to like a certain point in your life where you can appreciate it. Like, oh, okay, like that's a reference to something. That's
like that moment in there when in the back and forth he was like, oh, pronoun trouble. And I'm like, oh, who put that in the kids cartoon? Like,
oh yeah, I remember when the Forest Spirit said that. Yeah, it was controversial. I'm just kidding.
Don't get me, but like, well, it's funny because. Matt, you brought up the quote from one of the wolves, and it was so interesting because I was having this conversation with somebody about The Good Dinosaur, and a lot of people hated The Good Dinosaur.
I'm ambivalent to it.
I appreciated it so much for really not being a kid's movie.
Oh yeah,
because there's one point where Sam Elliott is a T-Rex who is like a rancher, so he's playing a character like he would have played in some kind of Western. He's like, I grabbed that gator and smothered it in its own blood. Yeah. And I'm like...
And for me, it wasn't just that. It was also the fact that raptors were legit heroin. Were drug
and
addicts.
John Ratzenberger's one line it is, I'm gonna kill you. And Chase Adams like, oh, wow. So like this isn't even written like it's for kids.
So,
and it's interesting. But Kevin, did you have something that you wanted to bring up?
For final thoughts, a couple things. I mentioned it before, but Lady Eboshi was a badass. She was my favorite character. One of my favorite moments in the movie was when they're having, I think they were fighting the samurai towards the end of the movie, and they were shooting arrows at her. She was catching them all with her umbrella, and then she just had spare muskets on standby. So she would shoot. One of her men would pass her another gun, and she'd shoot again. And I enjoyed how savage San was. The way she's introduced in the movie was just kind of brutal. She's sucking the blood out of the wolves. You really get the impression that she's feral, and she keeps it up throughout the rest of the movie. So I appreciated that.
There's some really strong female characters in this movie, and like they kind of rule the roost a little bit because like Lady Ibushi is such a strong, resourceful character, and like you would imagine like if this was an American film and like a live action film, it'd be like somebody like Josh Brolin would be like the one leading this city, but it's not. It's a woman who is resourceful enough to like have like muskets on standby because who's got time to load muskets?
When she was like when she was asking them to refine the weapons, and it's like, yeah, no, this like this shoots like silk, is so smooth. I still need a lighter, not for me, but like for everyone else. It's like, okay, damn, all right.
Really go kick some ass. You know, sometimes it reminds me how like characters promote themselves. I'm a powerful, you know, like I'm a label, right? Whereas when it's their actions that are justifying it, you know, they're just in it. You know, that's why I can't stand about most characters nowadays that are pushing, and as a sound political, or you know, or trying to make this sound political. It's like pushing an agenda, like
you leading into talking about it, saying that.
I know, but like it's the actions, you know, it's like just do it, you know, and make us appreciate it like that.
Also, I like that because I think a lot of times I wonder if, and I kind of hate it when people like that, like bash like American movies. I've seen like American movies that have made me cheer and cry, but like I don't know. But sometimes American movies like they'll like remake stuff, and yeah, like it's not too great. But I feel like sometimes like Lady, what's her name again?
Ibushi.
Like I'm literally like averse.
We just say Milady.
Yeah, it's like Milady person.
Milady.
I feel like sometimes certain filmmakers maybe they would have made her strong, but then that was like her only character trait.
Yeah.
Like she would have been strong, but her motivation is like, I want to get the thing here over here. That's why I like explosions.
Money.
Like, you know what I mean? But like her motivation is like, I came to liberate people. Like she's like when Daenerys was cool. What was that before season 5?
Never.
Yeah.
It's like the contrast. We're watching Atlantis: The Lost Empire right after Princess Mononoke, and we go to a villain character in that movie whose main motivation is to just get rich.
I like money.
That's it.
Yeah, like her liberating, I guess the women in the brothels, and also like her caring for the lepers and putting them into action. I thought that was like hella dope. Actually, I don't agree with her. Like in the end though, and I to be honest, I kind of wish. I'm sorry, Kevin. I kind of wish she got her head eaten off.
I was waiting for her to die the whole movie, but she was still my favorite character. Right.
I don't wish like bad stuff on your favorite character, but yeah, she got on my nerves after a while. But she's still really cool though. Still really cool.
Yeah, I mean, you got to see all her motives, right? She had a lot of bad motives, but right.
How about you, Jim? You have any final thoughts?
Awkward silence. Yeah, of course. Speaking to like character complexity, there's all these different conflicts going on, like you guys have mentioned, between progress and the old way. Like there's the samurai that are doing things the old way, and there's Lady Eboshi and her people who are doing things the new way. She's giving the women gender parity, but also destroying the forest. Like there's all these, there's layered conflict here, and it's not just good versus evil, you know. And I think that's what I appreciate most about it. It's trying to do the right thing that also brings about the destruction of the forest or other negative consequences. And then it's also what you could think of as negative motivations, like Lady Eboshi going to kill the forest spirit, that results in other things. Like that one scene, Matt, that you mentioned with the ethereal, like the creature, the forest creature is just melting around. It's like lava, but also just black ooze, you know? So like I enjoyed that it was kind of man-made disaster or lady-made disaster. Yeah. So I appreciated that. But as you guys were talking, I really don't know, like, why is Princess Mononoke the title of the film and not any of the other characters? Is it because she has like a leg in each camp? She's human, but she's also savage. Like, why not Ashitaki?
Maybe it's just like in the writers, like they spend so much time developing the world, and they're like, well, we have to name the movie now. So we gotta figure out something. So he's a pretty cool character.
Jim, I like your explanation of she is straddling the world of being a human being, but being so deeply connected to nature.
That's good.
Yeah, I think she's kind of central to that. She's also kind of a bridge between the fighting going on, right?
Even
she's kind of central to the conflict.
Yep.
Even if she's not the main character.
On top of it.
Yeah, like even the name itself shows that conflict. Princess is like a royal title, right? And then Mononoke comes from the more natural world that she inhabits. So yeah, absolutely.
And she is not dainty at all. She's like running on rooftops. Exactly. She's running on rooftops like
she ain't gonna be in the Disney catalog.
Yeah, exactly.
She's straight murking everybody.
Yeah, I was thinking of Crouching Tiger, just how people just kind of like run super quick and just kind of like that was and then she like having the dagger. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yep. It was so great. It was so great.
There was quite a bit of Naruto running in this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was wondering about that part too. Like, that's another example of kind of like unnecessary but super appreciated. And again, I'm not an animation like expert by any means, but like even when you see her kind of or people's like running and you see like the shingles on the roofs kind of just like getting destroyed or just getting like pushed down, I didn't have to do that. Like they probably did it. They probably did it not even like for the audience. Probably just did it for themselves. Where it's kind of like, oh yeah, like that was me. I did that. Like that's really cool. That's really cool to see.
I wish that I could say I was the man who drew the shattered shingles on the roof in Princess Mononoke. There is somebody out there that is that person.
You know, I kind of imagine that sketch from they did the MTV Movie Awards did this sketch years ago where they're making fun of Batman Begins. And remember when the tumbler is going through the building and there's the shingles that get blown off of that?
Yeah.
And they show the guy getting mad because he just worked on all these shingles. And I just finished this work after like 2 years of putting all this together. And then like Batman credits like, damn you, Batman!
My cabbages.
My cabbages!
I did.
So I was wondering about the title and everything too, and the name Mononoke. So I looked it up because I don't think it was really explained too well in the movie. But like the character's name is San, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And Princess Mononoke is a title that the Iron Town gave to her. And I Googled it, and Mononoke is not a name in Japanese. It's a word that describes vengeful spirits that possess individuals, makes them suffer, and causes disease and death. So it's a title the town bestowed onto her because she was annihilating them, essentially.
Wow.
Gotcha.
Except Mononoke really fits on that black curse, though.
Right.
Because that literally is infecting
with
and possessing people and causing mass destruction.
And it goes to what Jim was saying, where it's the contrast between being dainty like a princess or, you know, being like a title to something vengeful spirit that's like a succubus.
And actually, now she is technically, I suppose, by the end of the movie, she's technically like the wolf queen, sort of, which is also kind of interesting in a cool way. Yeah, not interesting enough to want a sequel.
Yeah, call Princess Peach.
Princess
Peach. Oh, Princess Peach.
Princess Peach.
So it's probably something that maybe got a little lost in translation when us Americans are watching it. But it's just a word in Japanese, so I think they might know what it means. I didn't.
Wait, so what does it mean one more time?
I've got the definition pulled up. A vengeful spirit in Japanese folklore that they do things like possess individuals and make them suffer and cause disease or death.
Sounds like my ex-girlfriend.
I feel like I've met a few Mononokes. Like, well, never mind. Well,
you had the same joke. There you go.
Offline. You cut off my joke. You screwed up my setup.
Sorry, Matt. Or were you talking to Joe?
Yeah, that's
But those are our thoughts. Now we're getting Rodney Dangerfield over here. Back to school. Next movie on the movie club. No, so our next month we'll be doing Clint Eastwood directed and starring Unforgiven, also starring Morgan Freeman, Gene Hackman, and Richard Harris. So make sure to tune in next time. But thank you from Kevin, from Vinnie, from Jim, from Joe, from Matt, and Shane. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting the Development Hell podcast.
You should end it by